again, to a lot of people, they don't plant plants in the summer, and some people prefer to plant them in the summer, some people prefer to plant them in the winter. But we all know the hot spell we've had in December, January, and even though you can plant them now, there's various ways you have to look after them. So I just thought I'd demonstrate, especially with gums and a Kangaroo Paw second, how to transplant them into various soils. Now, even though when you buy a plant, the tallest one isn't always necessarily the best, especially in our summer heat. So I brought this one along and I thought I'd demonstrate how to plant it. Now the first thing to do is, if it's that big, you can do it a favour by reducing a lot of the top so you don't have to stake it. So that's the first thing, if it's that big. If by reducing all of that canopy there and all that foliage, it now wouldn't need the staking. You can see there it's quite firm, and it wouldn't need as much watering. And the other thing is you can do with a lot of them, especially gums. A lot of people are misled a little bit. They say, well, what happens to the taproot? Well, if it has bound around a little bit in there, you can see that there, the best thing to do would be to nip that off also, so it goes straight down. So taking that off, it will now go straight down, and you'll find that it'll be a faster growing small tree. And the other thing with gums is, rather than stake them, now that will now bush out. You want it to grow into a bushy shrub the first year. It'll pull itself up the second year, and the third year it will go straight up into a tree. So don't try and make it into a bean pole the first year. You'll find that they have to grow naturally, like they do in the bush. And the second one there is a Kangaroo Paw. Now, being, I suppose we're all a little bit impatient, we want the biggest possible plants that we can, but as you know, with the extreme heat out in the garden, that type of plant in that amount of soil just wouldn't cope unless you gave it 2 or 3 gallons of water a day. So again, the best thing you can do would be to reduce at least half of the foliage. Now, Kangaroo Paws are only in the grass family, so you're not doing it any harm. You'll find that all that will come away. It seems like quite a severe cut, but it isn't. It's quite normal, considering the type of pruning that is done to a lot of plants. So there you are. You're back to the normal. You've got your equal top and soil. So that's the correct size to plant. Now, another thing, a lot of nurseries grow in sawdust in the container, and you'll find that the roots develop quite in peat too. They develop quite thick. It's not root bound, but it is just too fibrous there. So again, you can cut a lot of that off the base. So if you've done it on the top, and you'll find it's only, if you can see in there, you'll find it's only on the outside of the pot. It's not on the inside. So by reducing, I'll go right around there and take all that off. As I said, the Kangaroo Paw is only a grass family, so compared with the Eucalypt I showed you, now you'll see that that is quite free in there of roots. So that is now a beautiful little plant. You can see that the majority of vigorous roots there that you've taken away won't need so much water. So now you've got a good planting out size. And as I said, if they're in a sawdusty mix, you've got to try and phase that into your own soil. If it's sand, you've got to try and phase that into sand. A sawdust is a little bit like a blotter, so you've got to try and, it'll need a lot more water than your own soil. So you can either break it up a little bit here, or you can put a little bit more nutriment in around it to try and get it into your sand. Especially with trees, you've got to try and get the roots to go deep as quick as possible. There's no point in preparing a lot of the top. You want the roots to go down. So put a bit of either humus or whatever you've got. If you're in clay, you've got to break it, take it in from sawdust into the clay straight away. But if you are in gravel or clay, just watch it. And have a look at the containers first. If you've bought them from a nursery, have a look at the soil that they're in, and then you'll be able to see what preparation you'll need to take in the future. So these are just a couple of little things on planting. You can plant in the summer. all our plants, Australian plants, are all evergreen and they grow in the summer. So if you want to get a head start, put them in the summer, plant them, but they'll need a lot more watering. You'll have to water them daily. A lot of people have been complaining about losing them, so especially in that century heat weather, if it's as hot as that, you'd need to water them daily on the initial planting sizes. So I hope that's cleared up just a little point there on transplanting plants ex the nursery. One other thing, while I was on the kangaroo paw, I'll just say with the evergreen kangaroo paw, that was the red and green kangaroo paw, but on the evergreen kangaroo paw, that has flowered early summer, and it's finished flowering. You can see there I'll just take one off there. You can see the old spent flowers. Well, they're now seeds, so each one of those little pods in there holds about 20 or 30 seeds, and you can either cut them and put them in a paper bag, they'll fall out, and you can use them and grow them from seed. Or they look quite a bit unsightly, so again, I would do exactly the same thing. This is only in a container, but in the ground it would do exactly the same thing. I would not just reduce the flower heads, I'd also reduce quite a bit of the foliage, and you'll find that that'll come up quite quick. Again, it seems quite a severe prune, but you'll be quite astonished with the amount of new growth that will come up, because you've got to understand that they've already developed their root system. They've got quite a deep root system, and now the top will come up quite quick. You don't have to prune them back as hard as this. If you're on an irrigated garden, obviously they would be quite lush and green, but if you aren't going to give them that amount of water, you can help them the same as they do in the bush. There they've got a dormancy in the bush. You can reduce them a little bit in the garden. So I hope that helps out that small problem on the kangaroo paws. As promised, with some of the flowers that are flowering this month, Banksia prionotes is the first one today. There are many Banksias that do flower in late summer, autumn. Probably the majority of them, or the most spectacular ones, are late summer, autumn. And this one, Banksia prionotes, grows to 5 metres. It's a small upright tree, starting to flower now and goes through for about 2 to 3 months. It's quite a long flowering one, as with all Banksias. And nicknamed the acorn Banksia, you can see there the bud coming out there, and the flowers from the bottom up, the orange flowers coming up. Each tiny little flower comprises to make that whole cone there. Some others that flower, as I said, that's the tree one. Some others that flower exactly the same orange flower are Banksia victorii, Banksia burdetti, and Banksia hookeriana, but they all grow in a shrub. So when you're thinking of selecting shrubs, include one of our famous Banksias. They're a very rewarding plant. And one from, that one grows, the Banksia prionotes there, the orange one grows from, naturally from Perth in the coastal sands right up north, so up to Jordan. But this one here, Banksia baxterii, or the bird's nest Banksia, grows naturally in the southwest. And even though it does come from the southwest, adapts very well in the Perth and surrounding situations. A very adaptable plant. Grows in sand, clay, heavy soil. It's a really good one, and an excellent vase picking one because it produces such long stems. Not quite as spectacular because it's only a lime green flower, but it's a very, very good cut flower. One of the most prized cut flowers. The foliage is a little bit bigger. The serrated green foliage is a little bit bigger, but a good one when it dries too. Grows to 3 to 4 metres. Not as spready as the others. It's more upright. Grows. You wouldn't need a lot of room, so it's as upright as it is wide. Couple of metres. There. On to one of our famous gums. As promised, you couldn't pass, there's that many eucalyptus, you couldn't pass a month without having at least one flowering gum in your garden. And this one is so versatile that I think I could talk about it for a few minutes, because a lot of people on the coast, a lady was saying in Geraldton last week that there's not enough selection of plants that will take the salt winds, limestone situation, and say the situation of Geraldton, Bustleton and Bunbury and all on our coast. But there are an immense amount of plants, and if you select these ones that will grow there and select them, group them, plant them in groups so they look a natural clump of them, you'll be rewarded, because plants like this one will flower for 2 months. You know, they don't just flower for 5 minutes, they flower for quite a long time. Now, the Illyarrie, or Eucalyptus erythrocorys, comes out in red caps for nearly all January. It's red caps, and February comes out with this bright yellow, lemon yellow flowers, and you've got this two-tone effect, plus these nice sickle bright green leaves. So there's a short description on that one, erythrocorys. And I'll just talk a little bit about that. The only disadvantage of it probably is, not a disadvantage, it's just a fact of life, that it produces these large seed nuts, and they're quite heavy, so it weighs the branches down a bit. It tends to make it, some people say, unsightly, but it's its natural form. It looks like a large bonsai sometimes. And after it's flowered, or in its second or third year, you can give it quite a severe prune. You can cut it really hard, and you'll find it'll respond very quickly. It'll come back in that bushy form again. Most people seem to like that nice big bushy form. And as it flowers on its new growth, you can get rid of these, or you can collect them and grow them from those. But on planting of the erythrocorys, another thing that a lot of people have some queries about is the little bulb. A lot of people say, oh, there's a little bulb just at the base on the ground of the eucalyptus in the pots, and is it diseased or something? Well, it isn't, because that's quite natural. That little bulb at the ground level is called a lignituber, and as it gets older, that little growth gets bigger and bigger at ground level. But don't worry about it, because it's absolutely normal. And what happens is, in a bushfire, that protects it from the immense heat as the fire goes through, and it will come away very quick. And as I said, that's a good size to put in, and try not to stake them. Let them grow bushy, and it'll pull itself up quite quickly in Eucalyptus erythrocorys. Another one, just a little bit on, another thing on pruning is the red flowering gum has just finished flowering, and I would suggest, rather than pull them up into a straight tree, you can prune this one again, just like I've demonstrated there. You can prune it back as hard as you like. You know how they prune the box trees? They cut them back to, some of the stems are even 2 feet across. Again, you can do it with this. You can cut it back very hard, and don't be afraid of it. There's plenty of heat, and it'll pull itself out. That's the red flowering gum that has just finished flowering. A little ground cover that's flowering now is one called Scaevola striata, just a little dainty little ground cover that only grows about 2 feet across, reproduces itself from suckers, and produces these nice little purple violet flowers. Just a good one for a rockery in all soils, I'd say, except limestone. It'll grow in our sand, coastal sand, and in clay and laterite. So there's a good little ground cover in Scaevola. So I just thought I'd end today on probably our best, two of our best summer flowering plants, I think, is Hemiandra pungens. I have had it on before, but Hemiandra pungens, the green foliage one with these violet flowers, I think is probably our most vigorous and drought-tolerant ground cover. Grow in right from the beach back in all soils, and the Verticordia nitens or Morrison. I have had that one on before also. But the Verticordia, well, there's not one lot one can say. It grows to 1 metre, dries very well. There's a bunch I picked last year, and you can see there it's an excellent drying one. The only thing there extra one could say is when you're picking flowers, you could put them in glycerine and water, say 3 or 4 parts water and 1 part glycerine, and this will stop them from going brittle, and it'll prolong their ability in over the years. So there's a few more handy hints, and till next time, cheerio.